We have approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes. I'm fine if we take them both at the same time. Hopefully everybody else is. We have minutes from March 3rd, which was our regular meeting, and we have minutes from March 23rd, which was the special meeting we had about the boilers. So if we can get a motion in either way, you're comfortable, I'm comfortable with both.
I move that we approve. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Kate.
I move that we approve both meetings both minutes from March 3rd and March 23rd as a slate. I guess.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion from Kate and a second from Susan, Gloria, and we will, if there's any questions or comments before a vote, there's none, so we will take that to a vote. Kate?
Approve.
Teresa?
Approve.
Susan?
Approved.
And I approve as well, so that's unanimous. We do have a voucher that went out for approval. That voucher was for $152,594.54. I don't know if anybody has any questions about that or not. Since we don't physically pass them around any nowadays, I still like to take a moment to make sure that no one has questions. So I'm not seeing any questions. We'll move on to public comment. I did look earlier. I didn't see any public comment, nor did I have any requests for any. So I don't know if you did, Mark.
Just checked with Selena, Todd, and nothing's come in.
Okay.
And again, if we get anything, we'll forward it on to the board.
Okay, thank you. Which brings us right on to reports and updates and the principal report, Gloria.
You're muted, Gloria.
Yes, I am. Boy, I can't wait till we can meet together in person.
That will be a phrase that none of us want to hear again for a long time.
I know, right? Oh my goodness. Okay, so I apologize for not having this written to you, but I have a lot of good things to share. I'm going to start with just some takeaways from my staff. We had a staff meeting back in March, beginning of March, and folks met in small groups, some staff meeting other staff really for the first time, even though we work in the same building. And so they were all asked some positive takeaways from this year of education during this pandemic. So we had some pretty positive takeaways, and I just wanted to share some themes with you because I thought that would be some info that you should have. Recess was a big topic, had the most feedback from our teachers. Comments regarding recess included the positive aspect of having smaller recess groups, having consistent rules and expectations for recess. It's had a significant impact in a positive way on student behavior and able to attend and focus and learning. We've seen less behavior issues at school, markedly, drastic, I would say. I guess has a negative connotation, but just a remarkable decrease in behavior issues. A lot of fresh air, body movement's been great for the kids, for their social emotional development. The kids do seem happy and genuinely happy, which is a thing I think our school should be super proud of during this year. And just a reminder to you, the students have had 3 30-minute recesses a day. So they do have that time to get out and move. Other positives at our school, another theme were transitions. We've had fewer transitions this year. For example, our middle school teachers transition from one room to another and the kids stay put in their classrooms. And so they haven't had to move about as much in all the classrooms. We used CRF funding to purchase carts and things to be able to deliver meals to classrooms. And so most of the time, though, students are eating outside. Obviously, during the inclement weather, the winter, they were eating inside, but that has cut down on transitions as well. The spacing in lines also, this is funny, it's part of transitions, has helped students with just keeping their hands to themselves and people being in their own spaces. And so it's a lot of good positives from that. I touched on lunch. Lunch was another big theme. People really enjoyed the lunch outside. There's a lot of positive feedback, as you'd expect, that the state of Maine, being able to provide free lunch to our families and to these students was just remarkable. And breakfast, that has been just appreciated by everyone. The students eating in the classroom has been positive. The younger students are doing most or focusing on their on eating, and so they're eating more. And as there isn't as much talking when the students have their masks off and they're 6 feet apart eating. And something that you might not think of, but we have this beautiful salad bar usually in our cafe, and there's a lot of choices there for younger students, and just having limited choices for the youngers makes it easier for them to focus on eating, and that's been helpful, and more developmentally appropriate for younger kids to not go to the cafeteria. Cafeteria is a beautiful place. It's housing our 4th grade now, but it's also a time of, there's a lot of kids in there. And so having the lunches in classrooms and outside have been peaceful. Another theme that was brought up as a positive from this year is more greenhouse time. I'm super proud of our garden and greenhouse program. Our students in K4 are in the greenhouse and the garden once a week. They all have time with Miss Patty, and her schedule's modified in the fall and in the spring so that she has more time to devote to the garden and greenhouse program. And that way there's time for middle school students to be out there as well. So that's been a plus. And I hope you guys have seen some of the photos in the newsletter and on our Facebook page. They love it. It's been just wonderful. Another theme that came out of this year are the smaller class sizes. Some comments about these smaller groupings helps with conferencing with students, and it's just a benefit to be able to have the small groups for instruction at times. With the restrictions that we've had, a large portion of our special ed instruction has been pushed into classrooms, and so there's been feedback from staff that that having push-in special education services helps boost students' self-esteem and camaraderie and develop a sense of community, and there's less interruptions when that's possible. Teachers mentioned having an appreciation for release time for the work time on Thursday afternoons. Another big theme has been the daily wellness checks, and I guess the mask wearing this year. Parents doing that and our students not being in school when they're sick has just kept our school so healthy, so very, very healthy. And it's more time on task for teachers. Students are learning more because they're not, their learning isn't interrupted. They don't have to write subplans. No, whoops, that's the next thing. It's great. The sanitizing and the hand washing, we've all talked about how we can continue that at school as a part of how we do things. Let's see here, the clear universal expectations. That can be really pulled from all the themes that I shared with you, but the students having assigned seats on bus, our hand washing and distancing, the travel patterns, the expectations at recess, those clear universal expectations for students has allowed them to really settle and focus on learning. And that's been a big theme at our school that, if we're all in agreement on how we do things, then it takes the guesswork out of it all for the students. They're able to really focus. Technology, our staff, they leaps and bounds with the use of technology for remote learning. Mr. Opalwal Wendell has, he helped the teachers install and use these Google Jamboards that makes learning really interactive. Teachers can teach a math lesson in one room, and if there's a Jamboard in the other room, they can share the same screen. And so with some of our unique configurations this year, it's really been a neat way to adapt to the limitations we have and to kind of surpass them. Another thing that's been another theme that came up was the teleschooling program that we have. It's not ideal And it's not used when students are traveling, but when students have had to quarantine or if they're sick and they're able to participate in school, I have a designated staff member, Kate St. Dennis, and when a student needs to teleschool because they're out of school for 10 days or extended time, then that she's able to meet with the teachers, and everybody's teleschooling plan is different. It's so different depending on the age and depending on what's most important to that family and to that student. And so that's been a positive. The programming for after school, our early release Mustang afternoons has been, there's a lot of positive feedback on that. It supports our ed techs. It supports by really using them, using their skills. It supports a lot of teachers who are parents as well, and there's quite a few. Another positive was our Mustang Collaborative, which is that connection between art and PE that was to happen once a month, and it happened for most months, and where there's movement and art activities combined with Justin Norwood and Shannon Westfall, our art teacher, and the students go to the gym or outside or the art room for about 3.5 hours, which gives teachers some collaborative time too. Boy, Chef Emily left, halfway through the year, and we were so fortunate that Tasha Higgins came on board to be our cook, and she jumped right, just is amazing, and started offering staff lunches, and the staff do pay for those lunches, but she's offered those on most Thursdays, and that has been wonderful because the staff lunches aren't provided through the student lunches. And so that's been something that's been a little different, a little hard. And so she offered that. A couple other things, our staggered dismissals has made for peaceful dismissals and calm way to end the day. We use CRF funds to purchase winter gear. And so all students every day had all the gear they needed to be outside, no matter the weather. We were able to check in, recess staff were able to check in with teachers and make sure the kids had the boots, the coats, the snow pants they needed. And so everybody was outside playing. And the last theme that came out of this were not having the professional development during the day, the common studies. So there's more time on task for teachers. They didn't have to write subplans during the day. So those are takeaways that the leadership team pulled from our whole staff meeting. I don't know, is it appropriate to ask for questions? Does anybody want to?
Yeah, absolutely. Questions are good.
Okay.
Teresa?
The goal eventually is to have everyone back at school on a long-term basis, on a regular basis, similar to as before. And these things that you've noticed that's worked really well for the students, for the staff, are these all takeaways that you want to integrate into future years, even when everyone's back full-time at school? Like keeping the littles out of the lunchroom to keep it more comfortable. That's the one that really stuck out with me.
Yeah.
Just the classroom where the teachers won't move. The teachers will move, the students will stay. All the takeaways, will you keep them instated even when things go back to more normal? Or are these things that's just working for the now?
Yeah, that's a great question, Teresa. So things are pretty complex, right? And so a little bit ago, the CDC changed distancing guidelines for schools to 3 feet. But what do we have? We have a school full of students and teachers who have routines established that, and with those routines and structures come a sense of security and calmness, right? And so we're super mindful right now about any changes we're making. If teachers do want to make changes, they reach out to the wellness team. Wellness team meets on Fridays and makes recommendations, and I approve them, or I ask for more information or ask to halt or to stop. And so there are some incremental changes being made because of the new CDC guidance. But as far as these things go, this is great. This is information from the whole staff that's been vetted through our leadership team, but this needs a little more time for my staff to provide some feedback and clarity. But the goal is to come out of, to get some goals out of this list to lead us into planning for next year. It's all impacted too by, we've got 15 or so students coming back from virtual learning. We always get new students that move to our school as well. And so one of the things that does pop out from this list to me is the cafeteria and the feedback about that. That is a big space that could be used for learning. And, there may be some sound modifications that need to happen, and I don't quite have it all figured out just yet. But with the positive feedback for how we're doing lunches this year, that gives our school a little breathing room for extra instructional space. So yes, that was kind of a long-winded answer, but the goal is to be able to really prioritize from this list, but it's going to take a little more thinking before I have those goals in place.
Any other questions? No. So Gloria, I do have a question about, can you just, because there was so much information there. So you talked about the benefit of the smaller class size.
Yep.
Can you just say that again? So I got it all.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So with the smaller class sizes, there is also, and combined with the need for us to kind of limit our movements, there was a lot of special education services that were delivered within these small groups. And so there were fewer transitions and interruptions. And it was just, whenever you have a smaller student teacher ratio, right? It's easier to reach all of the students. I will say though, that balance, because the kids, what the kids want, they want to be together, right? And so we purposefully and, with approval, they're able to gather in their whole cohorts in the gym or in the music room. So they do get to be together in that way too. And I can say that the 6th grade, right, they put in a proposal to the wellness team last week to mix pods up. They've been in 2 different pods. And so mixing some of the students to have them in different pods is great. And that's totally appropriate because that whole cohort is 1 unit. So we're finding that flexibility within the rigidity of our structure, which is good. And that I think is the key, Todd, that balance between the whole groups together when it's needed and wanted, and then having those small instructional groups.
So I wanted to ask about that because that to me, that was a flag to say for future budgeting and discussion purposes, is there a way, because I thought you also said something about conferencing with students, that it enabled teachers to conference with students a little bit more readily, but I wondered if there's a reason enough from what you've learned now or will learn later to take a look at that as a recommendation to have smaller classes, maybe helping with teacher workload, but also enable those classes to come back together when it's needed.
That's a
I
good
see you, Julie. I see.
Yeah. And I'll just say this one thing, and then so looking at next year and the additional items I put in the budget, and as we look to hiring, it's all about creating a supported transition year. I see this year as kind of crisis management. I feel that's what it's been. That's what it is, right? So my main goal out of this whole school year was to keep everybody safe and healthy. And we've done that. And I'm super proud of that. And we're not done yet by any means. But, and in that, some pretty magical learning happened and our students are growing and learning. But for next year, my goal with what I put in our budget that you guys approved is 2 additional staff to help us have a supported transition year where there are still small groups, where we have the RTI staff, the literacy, support, the math support, to be able to really make sure the kids are learning, the teachers have the support and the colleagues to consult with to make sure the students are learning. So yeah, Todd, I've taken that into consideration as I look to plan ahead for next year.
Okay. Julie, I know you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want the board to understand 2 things about small classes. What Gloria is proposing for MDES is awesome because it puts multiple adults with groups. So groups can be very small when needed. They can be larger when they can be recombined. One other thing that Gloria pointed out was co-teaching with the interventionist, co-teaching with the special education teacher, so that the kids have the community and we aren't taking our most vulnerable kids and pulling them out more and sending them into class after it started and pulling them out so they never know what happened. The third piece of that is we know in our district, and this is particularly the case at MDES, true across the whole district, we have, no matter what size the group, kids on both ends of the spectrum. Okay, so the smaller the group with each individual teacher, the worse you're setting up the possibility of supporting kids. It's better to have a larger group, but have more dedicated teachers for different subjects for that. So you can have much more flexibility. You can be developmentally appropriate socially and emotionally, and you can address all of the differentiation that's needed for academics. And so this is why when you split everybody up into 10, 11 all the time, and then you try to have the interventionist pulling kids, and you have special ed pulling kids, and you've got the teacher still with a wide group, they don't have enough kids to even make groups to do some of the projects that we've worked on. And that came up when we were talking about the Touchstones discussion project at MDES. It was challenging because there were too few kids in the group. Because there were, 9 kids in that group, and if 2 were out, then there were 7 kids, and then it wasn't big enough. So I just want people to understand that the way that Gloria is thinking about this, I think is really, really smart, but it's not the same as just trying to make groups smaller.
Got it.
And I can expound on that a little bit. I could talk to you guys all night. I'd be happy to, but you probably have places to go. But I do want to just give you a couple more quick updates that one is directly related to that. I could say that above 95% of our staff are vaccinated, or almost. By Friday, pretty much most folks will have their second vaccines. And so I'm super proud of that and thankful, so thankful for that. And so thankful that the staff of our schools in Maine were prioritized for that. And then I wanted to talk about RTI for a minute. And this kind of actually is directly related to what Julie was talking about. So response to intervention, it is the process through which we support students at our school that need some extra challenges or that are struggling in learning. And, it's not a class or a time period. It's a mindset, and it's a process. It's the way we do things. And so our RTI team at our school meets one week at 7:30 in the morning. And so I meet with the literacy specialist, the behavior coordinator, the math specialist, and who's the RTI coordinator. And we look at tier 1. Tier 1 is the base, is all classroom teaching. It's what the teachers do. It's how they do groupings in their class. It's how they provide instruction. It's so much. And so we look at themes and patterns there, and we look at student data and do some quick regrouping on planning for some tasks we need to do, and look at upcoming student support team meetings. And the off weeks, when the RTI team isn't meeting, we have student support team meetings. And so let's say I'm a teacher and I'm teaching 4th grade, and I have a concern about a student in my class about math. He's a tier 1 student. And so my goal, what I need to do is I need to see, use all my bag of tricks and all my instructional tools and work to support this student so that they're learning and growing. And when I feel like I need some help, I consult with my math specialist, and we set up a meeting, and, I share what I've done, and, so some supports are put in place or some ideas are shared. And then when the teacher has, done that consult and still feels the student is struggling and they need a wider group or audience to help support the student, they schedule a student support team. That teacher comes armed with all the data that they've had. They've identified the student's area of challenge. They've identified the interventions they've put in place. They've documented the data for student growth. And so the problems presented to the team. And there's a lively, rich, guided discussion about how the student's progressing. And the team decides if they need to move, if the adjustments to the interventions need to be made, or if they need to be referred to tier 3 RTI, so that there's a direct intervention that's put in place by a interventionist, by the math specialist for that student. And a follow-up meeting is scheduled 6 weeks after, where more data is brought back. And this time the math specialist is the case manager and has the information. And that's when we see if we need to keep them at that tier, or if there is indeed something that is preventing them from learning, and that a special education referral is something that's necessary. So there's a lot of people involved, and what you don't see is, but what is happening is the math specialist coming, maybe observing a class, doing a consult with the teacher off and on, the teacher going, observing the math specialist, providing the intervention, the little like in-house PD happening. There's a lot that's happening, but that interventionist, that specialist, is really tuned into what's being taught in the classroom, how it's being taught, and has a connection with the students and the teacher. And so those opportunities, like Julie was talking about, can happen. Another way, we do RTI too, is if we find a theme or a group of students in a class that have a significant need, then the math specialist may be assigned to teach half of a grade or co-teach along with the teacher for that class to make sure the supports are in place. It really is varied. It's varied depending upon the needs of the students, the group of students, and the support that the teacher is asking for and needs. But there's a tightness to the system that helps keep it continually moving. And it's not easy. It's a lot of work, but it's lovely. It's really making a difference. Julie, did I leave anything out in that? I'm a little tired.
The only thing you left out was that because of all the work that you and your teachers have put into making this system really, really strategically supportive of each kid's needs, and also looking at stretch and challenge where needed, MDES has the lowest number of current referrals to special ed of all the schools, and has the most complete RTI system in place. And it's due to Gloria and her organization of all of the moving parts. And that takes an enormous amount of time. And I think that's why some extreme relief with buses and transportation and maintenance is going to be much appreciated here, and allow Gloria to really do what she is so strong at, which is the instructional leadership. I don't usually like to say nice things in front of her, it might make her feel too good, but you really need to understand this as a board, because you have an absolute gold standard RTI system in place, and it's really working.
That's awesome. That's great.
One thing that you might want to know too as a board is that so I inherited the student support team that was in place at MDS when I got there, and it's been in operation for a long time, and so we've just kept that going. And so depending on the student that's of concern, that team that's sitting at the table changes. And so this is something I think for the board to know. I think the reason this works is those meetings are scheduled Mondays and Wednesdays after school, like every other week throughout the year. And we'll have one at 3:15, one at 3:45. So we have two, right? So it's an hour each. And that's how they've been scheduled. And the teachers are paid the teacher hourly wage for each meeting that they go to. And that's the system that I inherited. And it seems to be working at our school. So that's how that's organized. And that's when we have those meetings and those discussions. And then I've staffed the school with that I was fortunate to have staff at the school that are the specialists that do the consult model and coach and work with the teachers, and are all sharing the same vision to help them. And so logistically, I just wanted to make sure you guys knew how that worked, that the RTI team meets every other week at 7:30 in the morning. I can tell you, I do have daily check-ins with my specialists, with my behavior coordinator, with the math interventionist. I check in with our literacy specialists, and that's frequently, and that's really important. So go ahead.
Did you want me to do the data today as part of your?
Yes, and so I'm just gonna, I have other little detaily things, just
No,
that we're
finish.
working, this is the last thing, that we're working on our end of the year calendar. I am both happy and also a little about the fact that we have 40 days of school left, calendar, like school days. And so there's a lot to put in there. I want you to know that the elementary principals are working on some activities to celebrate our 8th graders. And so I feel that we're going to, they're not off on their class trip, but we're going to make sure that they have events and opportunities that are safe and that are just memorable for them. So those are in the works. So our Arts Week, a modified Arts Week, we had a PTO meeting last night, and PTO approved a $1,500 grant to Mrs. Westfall for Arts Week. And so she's going to be collaborating with artists, and it's going to look totally different. But it's going to be a great Arts Week. That our bike hikes this year are a little modified, and they've turned into the Mustang excursions. And so picture middle schoolers paddle boarding at Little Long Pond while some are painting. And so that we're going to have those events happening as well. We have our end of the year assessments coming up. And so I have a calendar meeting on Monday for the MDS end of year calendar, so we can plan those out, because it's the school year is going to come to a pretty quick stop. We are the home field for baseball and softball. Our baseball and softball teams are made up of students from MDES and Pematic and Tremont. Max Mason is our baseball coach. Super happy to have Max back. And Nick Corson is helping him out. And Ben, who works for the town of Mount Desert, is our girls softball coach. I can't remember his last name, but I apologize for that. But students are super happy to be practicing, and pitchers and catchers reported to practice this week. And we just finished this week, intramurals are finishing up. So Justin did a really nice job with all the protocols for making the floor hockey tournament happen. That's a fan favorite. Students love it. And so that's been a big success. And we had, Ben Paulson put together a 3rd and 4th grade basketball skills clinic that has faithfully like 18 students at it, which is pretty remarkable, Wednesdays and Fridays after school. So that's been nice. And we'll start doing some planning for 8th grade promotion, because I know folks are going to want dates and that information. So that should be coming out in the next few weeks. I think I'm done.
Julie, was there something Julie wanted
Yes.
to add? Okay.
Yeah, so Julie's going to do this part for me.
You had asked for an update on MDES data. And so we just decided to put that as part of the principal's reports in these meetings, so that you could get your update. Okay, so Josh, if you have disabled the screen sharing, then I need you to put up the PowerPoint, please. So I've just prepared a pretty simple presentation, which I will have Gloria share with you. She has access to this. This is hot off the press. We've been working really hard on these to make these very specific to each school. I'll be giving a broader interview for the district. And we can go to the next slide. Let me explain what you're looking at. This is the math winter NWEA by grade level. Next to the NWEA winter mean. And we'll talk about the last column in a second. So you can see that you have to understand the standard deviations on these are pretty large at the national level. So green means it's well within the standard deviation. Blue means it's clearly above the standard deviation for the mean for the country. So this is right now, point in time where your kids are at. And the reason I want to show you this is because there's a lot of discussion about learning loss, a lot of concern about all the recess time, a lot of feeling that the kids are in some kind of crisis. I don't think your data shows that. What we did was we took the fall to winter scores, and then we estimated how many were going to meet their growth target or had already met their growth target for end of year. So I would expect that these estimates will be low and that your actual results will be higher. But if you look at it by grade, and these include the Virtual Academy students who were enrolled in the Virtual Academy program from MDES. The results for the Virtual Academy were not that different than the results of the other schools. I think that, like I said, you're going to see some bounce for the end of the year. And as you know, the NWEA is now the state assessment, so we'll be doing spring. We are clearly behind the beginning to end of year of 2018, 2019, which was the last year before the pandemic. And I estimate that the gap between the 54% and the 67% will close to some extent. And this is in math. So this is your math picture. Okay, next slide, please. This is your reading picture, same chart. You can see you have a lot more. And this is despite the fact that in a lot of these groups, we have a very wide spread, like I mentioned before. And you can see that certain groups are weaker or stronger in this point in time by a considerable amount. And you can see also that that doesn't correspond to how many have met their growth target. Okay, that just happens that these kids, all of our kids are dealing with a lot of different kinds of circumstances. Some of them read all through last year and continue to read. Some of them didn't. And you can see that overall 58%, and that fall to spring in that last year before the pandemic, it was 65%. And again, I suspect that this will close. This gap will close. You have one real anomaly in this group, which is this grade 8 at MDES. We saw a bit, and you'll see on the district-wide, a lot of groups have tapered off in ELA at grade 8, 7, and 8. We're a little concerned about that. We've put some things in place, but not this group. This group is absolutely cooking with gas, as they say, really, really going full force forward. But I thought that it would be interesting to take a look at particular groups over time. So for example, how did this 5th grade group look in 4th grade and 3rd grade to see if what they're doing now is typical of what they usually do, or if it's a real anomaly because of the pandemic. So if you could go to the next slide. These are, I'm sorry, I'm one slide ahead of myself. Let me back up. We did the same quartile report that we usually do. Found something very interesting, that the supports in reading are really working to help our struggling students, and our supports in math are really working to keep our top students really challenged and growing. And this is a really great way for Gloria and her team to take a look at what's really sticking out, what's really working. Everything else looks like it's working. Challenging those top readers is a place that MDES could look at. That is not the pattern that MDES has had in the past. So it's not like it's a problem with the programming. It may be what's happening with kids this year because of the pandemic. Next slide will show you the overtime. Apologies for that. All right, this is a little hard to read. Don't worry about the numbers. The numbers are not what's important. The bottom two lines, blue, I'm sorry, the orange line and the yellow line are always going to be the NWEA means over that time. And the green line is MDES math during that time for this class, the current grade 5. So you can see that there was a little bit of a tapering off between fall of 20 and winter of 21 for this class in math. I don't know what that's about. I'm not terribly worried about it because you can see they're continuing to make some progress, but I suspect that they're going to spark up in this last part of the year. And we are putting some supports in place to make sure that that happens. MDES reading, again, you can see there was a slight sort of tapering off from the fall to the winter. This could also be because the kids took the instruction, not the instruction, the NWEA maybe less seriously. We don't always give a winter NWEA for all students. So again, I think this is going to have some rebound. And I think you could see, though, that for 5th grade, given that they started right near the means and they're ending right near the means, so they're growing appropriately over time. Let's take a look at the current grade 6. So the current grade 6 in math came in with a loss in math from fall 19 to fall 20. You see that? It stayed not a loss, but not a lot of growth at all. But then look at what's happened between fall 20 and winter 21 for math. And the current grade 6 was doing great in reading until they got to the fall 20 and then tapered off with winter 21. They didn't lose ground. They just didn't make the growth that might have been expected. It's interesting because this group started off stronger in math and ended up stronger in math. This is obviously a strong math group. And your reading data is still obviously quite a bit above the mean in reading, which we would expect with the kinds of supports that we're able to supply and with the kind of really wonderful family support that we have and the families that we have as part of the MDES community. Let's look at the current grade 7. This is a really interesting picture. Much easier graph to read when the kids just keep going up and up and up for the most part. You can see this is another very, very strong math group. And they're continuing to make growth. And these are the ones when I was saying that the math was really strong. And this group is also was quite a bit above the mean in reading, but then tapered. So we had some of the tapering with some of the groups was between fall 19 and fall 20. Some of the tapering was between fall 20 and winter 21. And the last graph is for 8th grade. This grade has not paused. This group has not paused. This group started off above the norm, above the mean, and just has kept growing and keeping pace. One of the things that this shows is this is the group, the class that was there, but it's not an intact cohort. For example, if 3 new kids have come in to the current 8th grade since 5th grade, they've impacted this because your groups aren't that large. But it does give you a really good sense over time of the fact that our kids are okay. They're growing by this measure. They're showing a lot of resilience. And I expect that they will continue to show that through the end of the year. So we can take this down so that I can see people again, but I can take any questions. I know that was very rapid and you can take a more in-depth, and I know, Todd, you like to have it before, but it was literally the first one we did so we could have it ready for tonight. And we're working on Tremonts for tomorrow night. So these are kind of the absolute best that we can do, but we will give it to you, and I'm happy to also answer any other questions about it. These are just indicators, and it's just indicators using one measure, but it's a measure we've had for a long time, so it's a pretty good picture.
You're right, I like having it, but that was it was at a different format than normal. Okay, that was for my brain, that format worked really well for me.
Yeah, I can't.
And it was a little bit easier for me to pull out what I was trying to pull out in that format. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that you acknowledge I like to know beforehand, but that I appreciate that format a lot. That for whatever reason, that works for me. I don't know about others, but.
Well, I was afraid Jill was going to pass in her resignation when I came up with this format, because it took a lot to actually make that look like that. But I think it's important. So thank you for the validation that it was working.
Crying out loud.
Oh, for my brain, yes, it worked. Thank you. I see Teresa has a question. Her dog has a question. Sarah, thank you for putting that together. It is good to see that, and thanks for sending that out later. I think it's the first couple slides are the ones that take a lot longer to digest what it's saying there for me, and those graphs in the end really help. They help, I think. Teresa?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. You had mentioned, and I do apologize, but Humphrey, someone just drove by. And he's my home office assistant, and anyway,
Good
sorry.
thing, yeah.
My apologies. I just have a quick question. Are you concerned, considering COVID, in looking at the graphs, the way I was seeing it, it wasn't as difficult for the classes that dropped some, considering what they went through with the transitions with all the COVID. I don't think, is there a great concern that because there was a drop, considering what they went through? I thought, I would have expected there might have been a greater drop. So is there concern district-wide that this is going to be, you say they'll come back from it, but is there concern that it's going to be a hard row to get back into?
No, Teresa, I mean, in individual circumstances, as always, there are certain children who have had, for a variety of reasons, a really difficult time during this time. But overall, our schools have done an amazing job. We've been really well supported. We've been open. We've only been remote twice during the year. Our remote teachers are doing an amazing job at trying to connect with the kids and really do high engaging work with the kids. And I think the circumstances have been not what any of us would have predicted. I think the systems that Gloria talked about, having those in place, has really helped. I think MDS's data looks really good given the trauma that basically we've all gone through. And I really appreciate your pointing that out, because I think we have to stop talking about, I mean, we can talk about a back on track plan. That's what I've said to the principals. You can say back on track. We're not talking about learning loss. We're not talking about recovery. The kids are going to be fine. I'm not saying that callously, and I'm not saying that without recognizing that we do need to put specific supports in place. Gloria is putting specific extra people in place for next year, as she mentioned, a transition year, to make sure that we're not leaving any kids behind. But I think our kids are doing well, especially given the circumstances. And I think, again, I don't want to diminish the fact that there are some families and some students who have had a very hard time. And we've been very aware and been trying to put supports in place on a case-by-case basis. But it's not the picture of the whole group.
I feel very fortunate. Thank you so much, Julie, for all of that. And I feel so fortunate that our schools have been open. We have your support, the parents' support, and that our community has just rallied together for community health so that our schools are able to be open. I think the national conversation right now is getting schools to open that haven't been opened at all. And I think that is out there in the media all the time. And I think that, people hear snippets of that, and that I think adds to this. And so we're in a very different position. There are lots of schools in Maine that aren't open and haven't been open. And I just feel very lucky about that. I do have one more thing to announce if we're all set as part of my principal's report. Is that okay? All right. I'd like to publicly take a moment to thank beyond measure these three teachers that I'm going to share with you. They have announced their retirement, and I am sad, and I am also wishing them all the best, and we will miss them at MDES next year and beyond. Kate St. Dennis started at MDES in 1992, I believe, which is the year I graduated from college. gift. I have just had the honor and the pleasure to work alongside Kate and to learn from her and to go to her with questions with her institutional memory of the building and the programs. And she is a fierce learner, educator. She has the most expansive toolbox of educational strategies that of any educator I've ever met. She is thoughtful. She is an excellent instructional coach that meets teachers where they are and supports all students that are GT, students that are needing some extra support because they have a learning disability. She is optimistic and helpful and reliable and just wonderful to work with. And we're going to miss her, but I'm so thankful for her years of service. And I wanted to make sure that I announced that publicly. So she'll be retiring at the end of this year, as will Lori Beal, our Spanish teacher. And Lori Beal came on board MDES the same year I did. And she taught for years at Dedham. So she's been at MDES for 5 years. And boy, Lori, she epitomizes she's the first person to respond whenever there is a need or something that needs to be covered. It's always Lori who responds. She's the first one to help out. And didn't she just show her true colors this year by pivoting and, transitioning from Spanish teacher to being a 5th grade pod teacher, with little to no notice, and just really doing whatever it took to help us get our kids into school. She's been flexible and responsive, and she's just remarkable. She had to give up her Spanish classroom, and it was just full of all things. It was just such an enriching, warm space. And she became part of the 5th grade team, and we were able to add 7th and 8th grade Spanish lessons, and then transitioned into adding 5, 6, and K4 recently. And so she has Spanish on a cart right now, and she's traveling to classrooms and teaching Spanish, and the students love it. And we're going to miss Lori at school, but boy, she left it all in the field this year, and I'm super thankful for all that she's done and all that she is. And Ms. Ruddy, Joelle Ruddy, has a 5th grade teacher at our school, and she's also retiring. Ms. Ruddy I think she's been at MDS 7 years. She was here before I came. Is that right? She's there 2 years before me. Joelle's magical teacher and can make connections with all students. And her classroom is just a place of enrichment and wonder and connection, and just really going to miss her spirit and her flair and her just world knowledge and her just affection and commitment to our students. And so I'm sad as well for Joelle leaving, but also really happy for her. She's I think a newly beekeeper. She's a beekeeper now, and so she'll be retiring with her bees. But I wanted to make sure that I shared that with you publicly, because these are 3 really special people, and we'll miss them. And I just want to thank them for all they've done for our school. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. And they will be missed. Obviously I got to know all 3 of them, and great teachers. They're going to be missed, but I'm happy for them for what they're moving on to as well. Are there any other questions or comments before we move on? No. Okay. Thanks, Gloria, and Julie. Thank you. And again, I did like those graphs. Thanks. So I know that Mark has an update for us that's not on the agenda. I don't know if you want to go into it. Any other updates, Mark?
Yes, thank you, Todd. We did receive our health insurance rates for the year, and I did send that out to the board. It's good news. Kind of wish we got this information like in January. I think every superintendent would, but we don't. But in some, we initially projected 10% for an increase, as we traditionally do. We scaled that back based upon data and reports we were receiving. We thought 8% might be prudent. It turns out that was, because we were notified in March that the highest percent increase was, I forget that number, but it escapes me. But in short, what we received is our district-specific rate, which reflects no increase. And that's phenomenal news. And I'm really proud of the fact that over the last several years that I think the efforts that we've made as a district to consolidate our rates, along with some other things that we're doing, along with our HRA and along with the support we're receiving for wellness. I think that's all bearing and reflecting in what we've seen, or a trend over the last few years. So in short, the savings specific to Mount Desert would be for teachers. Well, let me quantify it this way. It is a savings in what we project for the budget. Okay, this is money that's not been expended. It's a placeholder, and I think the board knows that. But it's sometimes it's good to remind ourselves that it is in fact a placeholder. So the savings for that placeholder for the teachers, we had budgeted $309,503. The actual cost will be $287,466, which represents a savings or projected savings of $22,037. Support staff and administration in Mount Desert, the budgeted amount was $377,287. The projection is $351,571. The projected difference, $25,716, for a total of $47,753. I am going to make a recommendation, and that's entirely what it is. It's a recommendation from both Nancy and I. But this is subject to the approval of the board and ultimately, what the boards decide to do at each level. So this is just a recommendation. Given we're presently in collective bargaining, and given the fact that we always want to make sure that we're in good stead to navigate any planned changes, by default, if the board does nothing with this and the money's not expended, it would go to carry forward. But if the board does choose to make a recommendation to amend or make some amendments on the floor at town meeting, which that has been done in the past, we would recommend no more than, or at least retaining at least 4%. Again, the reason for that is we're not sure where collective bargaining will or will not go. And we always want to represent or have monies available to navigate any plan changes or hirings. And the other thing I'd add is that regardless of what we do, we cannot expend this money without board approval. And this by default would go to carry forward. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions, Todd.
Does anyone have questions for Mark? No? Okay. So Mark, one clarifying question, 4% of the savings?
So yeah, Todd, so what I should have been a little clearer. We budgeted for 8%, and we would recommend retaining at least half of that. In another year where we didn't have collective bargaining, we might recommend a little more, but we want to be in good stead. We have to make sure that we're required to have a balanced budget.
So my thought was, we got that information the other day, and maybe we wait for the AOS meeting because it's right around the corner right now.
Monday.
We'll have that global conversation, and then depending on when town meeting is, and unfortunately I didn't go to inquire about that date, maybe we can take action if we so feel fit on our next meeting, which is May 5th.
And Todd, I'll defer to you, but if you want, I think it's important to share that the warrant committee has been so supportive, and however you'd like to proceed with that, just in informing, but I'll defer to you and we can circle back on that.
Well, and everybody else, obviously.
Yep.
But is everybody good with that? General discussion on Monday, and then we revisit. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Mark, that's good?
Yep, thanks.
Okay.
Dr. Gauss,
Yes, sorry.
You were talking quite quickly,
Oh, sorry.
and so, no, it's okay. I just didn't get all those
I'll
numbers
give you the
down.
numbers.
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to send a spreadsheet out to the board so everybody can see it. It's public information, and I'll share that with the admin team. Sorry,
Thank
Clark.
God. That's
Yeah.
all good. I just want to have it accurate.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other updates or reports, Mark?
No, just as I know you're going into the discussion, Todd,
Yeah.
I did send out a final iteration or recommendation and I'm happy to give a little context if you'd like, or however you want to proceed just on that. And certainly want to welcome any input from Gloria and Julie. I did have a conversation with Gloria about it today, so looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that since the agenda went out and trying to figure out how to best approach that.
Yeah.
Because it's different, yet a little bit different again.
Yeah.
It seems like we'd be having a conversation that we don't have all the details for. So again, I was wondering if this again if we should have a discussion based on what we know so far, but maybe wait for the larger, broader description. It's up to you. I'll put that
I'm
back
happy
to
to
you.
give you some highlights, but I would agree with you, Todd, that this is not a fait accompli. The board's going to consider a first reading, and then there'll be another month. So there'll be
Okay.
other opportunities, and I'm happy to provide some context if you'd like, and then take any questions.
If you want to do a nice, kind of short, kind of there,
Sure.
sometimes in a smaller group, we might get a couple questions that may help. So
Yeah, and Josh, I don't know if you're listening in, but I don't know if you want to pull that up. It's on the AOS agenda if the board wants to see it. But so in short, we're still, all right. So we had two recommendations, just a quick history here. There was a recommendation that came forward with a weekly early release, and then an iteration that had no weekly early release. And that was really, pre-COVID times. Thank you, Josh. So if you look at this, Josh, scroll up for a second. I just want to make sure that this is the one. Yep. Okay, good. Thank you. Yep. So, so what we've done in essence is there's been a tremendous amount of feedback. And let me just say that, hindsight's 2020. Recognizing that we are in COVID, there's so much. I really appreciate Julie providing some context to answer some of the questions about where our kids are at. And that's not to minimize that it hasn't impacted some kids or families more significantly than others, but I think it's really important, and the board's done a really nice job in the community of reminding all of us, hey, we want to get our kids back in school, which we can be really proud of what we've done, but we want to get back to a sense of making people feel comfortable. And change right now is hard for all. So I appreciate that. And so where we've come up in essence is think of this as a blend. We listen to the feedback from parents. We listen to the feedback from board members. We listen to the feedback from staff and tried to come up with something knowing full well that we weren't going to please everyone. We weren't going to answer all the questions, but the goal here was to can we come up with a hybrid or go back to the model where we were going to pilot pre-COVID and see what the results are. Build capacity, build equity, build the systems, and listen to all the things that people were saying. And also, I just have to acknowledge that the innovation that Gloria had and her staff and the things they did, see if we can replicate those things and make sure that this isn't something we do to kids or to families or to staff. We do it with them. So what we're recommending is a monthly early release, K-8, monthly. And the dismissal for the students would be at noon. You'll note that it's on a Friday. You say, Mark, why are you recommending a Friday? We're listening to the feedback and saying, this is what people are saying would work for them. And so we want to see if that's going to have the results that people are pleased with. The other thing I think is really important here is no matter what the board decides to do, this is an opportunity, again, to circle back, build an ad hoc committee that will report to the superintendent and the boards with some findings and recommendations in December or January of the forthcoming year. So we're well ahead of the curve and building upon some essential questions. And that is, what are we looking to accomplish here? And what are the priorities? What are we doing with this time? And really drill down to the fact that, and I've said this, the calendar, going into the calendar, there has been an inequity with planning time. That's to be acknowledged. But the calendar is not the vehicle to fix planning time. The calendar is about teaching and learning and instruction. We do need to address the planning time piece, but that's done through collective bargaining, through the contract. And that's where we need to have and should have those conversations. I don't want to dismiss that. I just want to acknowledge that that's something we need to deal with. Now, just to be completely transparent here, Josh, maybe scroll up to at least the top of August, September, October. Yep. All right. So we have a recommended start date of September the 2nd for students. That has not changed in any of the iterations. I will acknowledge, some folks have said, well, why not start before Labor Day? This we feel is the right recommendation, given the potential that we might have to navigate some COVID related issues, but it'll also, we think it finds the middle ground. You will note there's an additional PD day. It's not an additional PD day that we added. It's an additional PD day that we just moved from, I believe, January. So you'll see an employee orientation day on the 26th. And then 3 PD days, and Julie can speak a little to this, but this is something feedback has said has worked well for staff in the past. And then we have a teacher day, September the 1st, which is planned for the opening of school. So you really have 4 days for staff, and I think that's significant. And then you see the first early release day, again, K-8 only, recommended for the 25th, which is a Friday, cascading into October. Again, early release day on the 22nd, a Friday. Now you will see in November, early release high school. I want to be completely transparent. There's been the notion of, one calendar. I think I need to be really careful with the language I use. It certainly is a unified calendar for the district K-12, but we have to acknowledge there are differences between our K-8 schools and the high school. No question. And we need to be able to delineate that through this, whether it's through tabs or notes. But I think for planning purposes, it's helpful for parents and staff to have this information in a singular format and allowing the differentiation. That November 3rd piece is for and that's not new. That's what staff have typically done at the high school to support the transitions to end of terms. And so I just want to note that. It's not a consistent thing. You'll only see that twice in the calendar for the high school. And again, the K-8 early release on the 5th of November, again, December the 5th. 2 PD days in January. Julie can talk a little bit more about the PD days and the placement of those. Josh, scroll up, please. February, March, April, you see early release for K-8, again, only. On the 16th of April, that's that second one for the high school end of term. So just to acknowledge that there would only be 2, the high school, and again, consistent with the K-8. Then we have the May, and then ending in June. I will say also the storm days, it just aligns well, and it doesn't preclude us from, if we're tracking well, to navigate storm days differently, but that gives us our hard or our fixed end date of no later than the 17th of June. And it certainly could be sooner than that. So sorry for being so long-winded, Todd, but I'm happy to take any questions. And Julie, I don't know if you want to add anything before we take questions, and certainly Gloria as well. Julie, do you want anything about anything about PD days or anything that I missed?
No, the 5 PD days are really visible. It's before school starts. There's a lot of mandatory professional development that we now have to provide to all employees. There's an awful lot of time needed for people to talk about the work that we pay people to do over the summer. And there's a need for providing differentiated professional development for people to be able to engage in based on what their teaching assignment is. The only other two professional days will be on either side of the weekend that marks the delineation between semester 1 and semester 2. Now, the high school's always had a day and a half there, and the elementary has had 1 day. Putting them there was done for 2 reasons. One is the feedback. We did it this year that way, and the feedback from teachers was extremely positive. They loved it. They felt like they were treated as a professional. They had the time to transition, to finish up report cards, and to make plans for the second semester. We also were able to do a lot of professional development for our ed techs during that time, because that was not meeting time and team time. That was time for finishing report cards and planning for the year. So ed techs were able to choose when they weren't being asked to be already in meetings with other colleagues. And many of them got a lot of their hours for recertification during those 2 days. And that was a really big boost for them. These early release days would be building based. They would be for the kinds of things that we keep saying we need time for. They will not be for IEP meetings, and they will not be for district professional development, and they will not be for common studies. Common studies will still need to be done drawing role-alike groups during the day, and there'll still need to be subs provided when those teachers are taken in that time. And IEP meetings will still be during the day. So it's a compromised calendar. I'm happy to answer questions.
And this, Todd, this is attached to the AOS agenda. So if anybody wants to see it or view it, it's live on the AOS agenda on the website.
I was just to thank you for mentioning that, Mark. I was just going to
Yep.
say that.
Yep.
I knew there was a link. So Gloria, I see that you have your hand, and Susan's next.
I do, yeah. And so back to what I spoke when I spoke about our RTI program, and I talked about tier 1 instruction. And tier 1 instruction is the classroom instruction. And so when our RTI team analyzes data, review the information that Julie shared with us, and we look at the needs for the school, we'll be able to provide some in-house professional development on those days targeted to the specific needs at our school. And so that's one component of what can happen or will happen on those early release days, which is really a gift and really time that's targeted to our specific needs. And so I see that as a real benefit. I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out. That's a key component of our RTI program that we've had a bit of trouble finding time for.
So I hope,
Su-
sorry, I apologize. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Todd.
just hold on 1 second, Mark. I know Susan had a question. So
I did, and it was partially answered by Julie. Thank you. I just wanted to have a solid understanding for the purpose behind the early release days, because that is the one portion I get questions on the most from parents. At my husband's place of work, they go through him to get to me. So they're always worried about, why do we have to have an early release day? And it's usually those parents, of course, that they worry about the sitters and having people,
Yep.
I totally understand it, but I just want to be able to take it back to them if I get asked again, and I know I will, what exactly I should say besides teacher preparation.
It's not teacher prep.
It's not teacher prep, but go ahead, Julie.
Okay.
It's professional release time. It's teacher collaboration time, and it's to allow us to put robust RTI programs in place and to do the kind of planning for integrated high engagement student learning. It is a time when everybody in that building has time at the same time, which is never the case at any other time. And the other 2 things I want to say is that the early releases, when we were piloting the early releases on Friday, we had asked for 4 additional. It looked very similar to this because there were already 2 for parent conference weeks, and there were 2 in there to help with report cards. So this is actually using time very similarly to the way it was proposed for the year before COVID, with the additional shift around the semester 1 to semester 2.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it. I think there'll be, honestly, 1 early release day a month I can't see why they would argue, but you never know. And I just want to be able to answer everybody's questions. So,
And Susan, if I may
Yeah.
touch, Susan, if anybody has questions, please feel free to, we're always happy to work with them. And I mean, they can certainly go through you, but they don't have to be bashful. No questions are bad
I
questions.
appreciate that, Mark. I know I forwarded emails to you before, so yeah, I definitely will keep doing that.
Yep.
Julie,
I have one last thing to say because I forgot to say it, and that is this would be a 12 o'clock release, not a 1 o'clock release,
Right.
because it's once a month and not every week. And it would also, even though it's not the same Friday, like the second Friday of the month, that's strategically placed to maximize teaching and learning.
Right.
And so what we hope we can do is we can encourage our families to say, when's the early release day this month? And that should, we think, that will keep people on track. They know that there's one, they know it's somewhere, they know it's a Friday.
Julie, thanks, because there was a methodology. It was not just done randomly. There was methodology to this. And I want to emphasize, I can't thank people enough because we did listen. We are listening and we will continue to listen. So I want to underscore, I know it was frustrating for some folks, but how getting there in the end, I think we're very appreciative of how thoughtful people have been.
thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark. And I know that, that I had lots of questions about it all during this time. You know that. And I'm not afraid to ask them during meetings at all. And thank you for all that work. I know that during everything that you were working on, this was yet another project. And thank you for putting all that time in to listen and to keep working towards this calendar. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Todd, thank you. And I'll just say that you guys, what the public may not know, they don't see behind it. You guys hold our feet to the fire. You hold us to high standards, and that's why when we're listening to a report from Gloria or Julie about how our students are doing, we can be really proud because you guys do hold our feet to the fire, and you ask good questions, and we have community input, and that's how it should work.
Thank you. So I look forward to to Monday. That'll be great. But again, thanks for keeping up with this. Really appreciate it. I know a lot of the community does too.
Yeah,
so again,
we're
thank
committed
you.
to doing that. So I hope there'll be, and there always is, I hope there'll be strong representation from Mount Desert and our other member communities on this subcommittee, because I really think it needs to be a working group and bring some recommendations so we can put our best foot forward here in December, January of next year.
Thank you. So if we don't have any other questions, I think we'll move on. We have an action item tonight. So is there any other questions or comments? No. So this action item is an annual event that we have for the nomination and election of probationary teachers. So I think Mark starts us off with it, and we'll go from there.
So as being a superintendent or a principal, one of the things I'm most proud of is being able to hand out diplomas or certificates of achievement. But certainly the other thing that is very significant, and I take it very seriously, is the nomination of probationary staff or staff going to continuing contract. And it's a rigorous process. We're very blessed with the people that we have, the people that we attract and can retain. And so I'm pleased to nominate two individuals. Todd, I can do them separately, or if you want me to go through both, whatever the board would prefer.
I think maybe separately makes the most sense, honestly.
So moving from first year to second year probationary status is Ben Mako. Ben is an outstanding educator. He's an educator that is completing his first year. He's transitioned, you may know Ben is transitioned from Connors Emerson, outstanding teacher, student advocate, and a great member of that team. I think been a great addition. So I am pleased to nominate Ben for movement from first to second year probationary status.
So at this point, we need a motion and a second, unless, Gloria, do you have anything to add to that?
I echo what Dr. Gauss said, and I just wish that we were live and in person so you could
I
meet
know.
Ben, see Ben, and but Ben's been a wonderful addition to our team. I really appreciate his leadership, his thoughtfulness, his connection with students, his collaboration with his colleagues, and his investment in our advisory program, and which has really blossomed this year. And I'm just happy he's a part of our team.
And I should add, Todd, that Gloria and I meet with all the principals beforehand, before making these recommendations, to review the progress, to review the evaluations, to make sure that I've received the principal's feedback and input. So it's important the board know that we have a very rigorous process that we follow.
Okay, I'm fortunate to have him part of my life because with my son. So, and I know everything you said is absolutely true. So, we need a motion and a second.
I make the move to recommend Ben Mako from first to second year probationary status.
I second it.
Second?
Great, thank you. We have a motion by Susan, a second by Teresa, Gloria, and we'll take that to a vote. Kate?
Approved?
Approved, thank you. Susan?
Approved.
Teresa?
Approve.
And I approve as well, so that is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations, Ben. Todd, may I continue, please? Okay.
Please.
And then for recommendation to move from third-year probationary status to continuing contract is a big move, but I'm thrilled to nominate Shannon Westfall. And Shannon, if you haven't met Shannon or engaged with Shannon, Shannon does a wonderful and amazing job with our art program, and just been a great addition, and pleased to nominate her as well for continuing contract status.
Thank you. Again, if there's any questions or comments, Gloria, if you want to add anything.
I do. I also just feel so very fortunate to have Shannon on staff here. And a very funny fact that I don't think many of you know, I was principal years ago at the Vinyl Haven School on Vinyl Haven Island for 2 years, and Shannon Westfall was my art teacher. And so it's just been, when she applied for this position when Ms. Shutt retired, I was so happy, and it was exciting watching the staff at our school get to know her and see all the magic that she has. Shannon has a remarkable tact and way to get to know all the students and find the specific type of art they're into, so they're invested, and it's magical. And there are like 6 different types of art happening in the art room, and it all seems effortless, and the kids are so invested. She incorporates social justice projects into her art program. She's a member of our school's leadership team, our school's operation team. She offered up her art room for 1st grade this year so we could get the school to open. And then she advocated for art on a cart and started having classes in classrooms, and we were able to transition grade 1 to a classroom. And now Shannon's art room is alive and functioning as an art room space. She was the brains behind the Mustang Collaborative with Justin. She is a team player. She's a great leader, and she is just a wonderful addition to our school. And for those of you that haven't had a chance to meet her, I can't wait to introduce you to her. So I appreciate this support, because she's definitely one of the big reasons we've had such a successful year.
I agree. A great addition to the school. So without any other questions or comments, we looking for a motion and a second on that as well.
Was that, I'll make a move, but I just want to clarify, was that third to final year?
It's correct.
Okay, so I will make a move for Shannon Westfall, 3rd to final year probationary period.
Gloria,
It's
it's
third
continuing.
continuing contract. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, continuing contract, sorry.
So we have a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a second. So Gloria, we have a motion by Susan, a second by Kate. Without other questions or comments, we'll take that to a vote. So we'll start with Kate.
So moved.
Approved.
Approved.
Susan?
Approved.
Approved. Teresa?
Approved.
And I approve as well, happily to see that. So that
Thank
is
you.
unanimous. So that is
Thank you.
great.
Congratulations to both Shannon and Ben. Appreciate it.
Other business?
I
No, I
don't have
know,
anything at this time, Todd. I just want to make sure, though, that if I may, just, I was contacted by a planning board representative from the town of Mount Desert. I just want to make sure the board knew, because they asked, they have an issue coming up that they think is going to be significant. They asked if they could hold the meeting in the school. And I wrote back, I didn't copy you folks, but I just have to say, we're looking forward to the day that we can make our school, our community resource available to the community again. As you folks know, we're still meeting remotely. We're still following CDC and government guidelines. At this time, the prudent thing to do is for us to maintain our protocols. We know that, but we know with things coming up, town meetings, promotional ceremonies, all of those, we're working really hard to make sure that we can bring our communities back in. But we also want to be cognizant of the fact that many people in our communities are not vaccinated yet. Our students are not vaccinated yet. The folks that have received vaccines, it's a 95% effectiveness, which is great, but there's still a 5% window. And I just received a report today from Ed Liu from the Jackson Lab, and it really affirms the fact that schools are doing a great job, not just our schools, but all schools are doing a great job. And the report really determines that the issues with COVID and community spread are largely not school-based issues. Schools are safe because of the things we're doing. So I just wanted to make sure folks know that it's not that we don't want folks in our schools. We've got to continue. We are not out of the woods yet. We're hopeful that we're going to get to that place. We're going to continue to be collaborative and work with folks, but we really have to be cognizant that I'm concerned because there is a sense of euphoria. There is a sense of hope. Those are all good things, but we are not out of the woods yet. And so it's really important for us to keep our feet on the pedal and doing the right things. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So other business, no other business, Gloria, no, Mark. Anybody else, other business?
No, but we just want to see all, folks at 6 o'clock, if you're able to make it over for our high school meeting.
Future agenda items? Any future agenda items?
You may want to come back to the calendar, Todd, again.
Calendar, and then maybe, well, depending on when our next meeting and town meeting and all, we may need to schedule a special meeting
Right.
for our health insurance.
Yes,
Yeah,
your next
okay.
meeting is
The 5th.
slated to be May 5th. Yeah, but
Yeah.
absolutely, we can move things up.
Okay. So the next meeting is May 5th. We do have our voting in place for May. If we need to address that, we will at that time. And so I don't see that we have anything else other than the annual high school budget meeting that's coming up at 6 o'clock. So
Dress warm.
yes, that's an in-person meeting. I know that some of us may not be able to attend tonight, but I'm sure we'll have a good turnout. So
In person and outside,
Yes.
dress warm, please.
Teresa,
How late do you want, because I'm gonna go get Addison now. How late can I be before it's like, oh my word, there's no point for you to be there?
We don't turn anybody away.
Okay, so if it's like 15 minutes later,
Oh,
so
yeah,
I
you're
do need to
fine.
drive and bring them back. It's like,
You take
Rena had to
your
work
time.
today. I didn't know she had to work. So it's like, I have to go get him now. And
You're
I do
fine.
apologize, but I will be arriving late, but I don't want you to think, oh my word, why is she so late? But that's why.
Not at all. That's fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. I'm gonna sign off now so I can go grab him.
okay, bye, Teresa. Anybody in a
Thanks.
motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that is it. Thank
Thanks,
you. We'll take
everyone.
a